People hear the name Marcus Aurelius and they imagine strength, power, an emperor sitting on a throne, untouchable, unshaken, but the truth is more human than myth. He was tired, he was grieving, he was afraid, and still, he led. He ruled a world that was falling apart. Plagues swept through cities. Armies rebelled, senators plotted in the shadows, his own family fractured beneath him. He wasn't just carrying the empire, he was carrying himself through the fire. And what did he do with that weight? He wrote. Not speeches, not commands, but whispers to his own soul. Meditations was his refuge, not for glory, not for praise, but because it was the only place he could be honest. When he felt overwhelmed, and he often did, he returned to one question. What is within my control? And if the answer was nothing, he let it go. That surrender wasn't weakness. It was strength. Because Marcus knew something most of us forget. We can't control the world, but we can learn to steer ourselves. He reminded himself, every single day, that his emotions were not reality. They were visitors. Storms passing through. He didn't deny fear. He didn't pretend to be brave. He chose to be steady, despite it. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Even in the darkest hours, he reached for clarity. He didn't lash out. He didn't retreat. He slowed his breath and examined the story he was telling himself. He asked, is this fear truthful? Is this anger useful? Is this suffering permanent? He made space for answers, not dramatic ones, quiet ones. On the outside he wore armor, but inside he was building a different kind of strength, not the kind that dominates, the kind that endures. And that's what makes him unforgettable. He didn't pretend to be more than human. He practiced being fully human, with integrity. He fell short and still came back to center. He got lost and still returned to principle. He wasn't perfect, but he was present, and maybe that's what we need most. Not power, not certainty, just the reminder that when we feel overwhelmed, we're not failing. We're living, and we get to choose how we move through it. There's something sacred about the way Marcus Aurelius wrote. It wasn't loud, it wasn't performative, it was quiet, measured, honest. He didn't demand that the world change, he asked how he could meet it better. That's rare, even now, especially now. When pressure rises, most of us collapse outward. We get sharp, we get reactive, we reach for something outside ourselves, control, validation, escape. But Marcus went inward every time. When the world pressed against him, he didn't fight it with force. He answered it with reflection. And not just once. He practiced, day after day, moment after moment, because he knew something that most people miss. Self-control isn't built in the big moments. It's shaped in the small ones, the quiet ones, the ones where no one's watching. He asked, what is required of me right now? What virtues can I practice here? What would wisdom do in this moment? He stripped everything down to what actually mattered. Not glory, not ambition, not even being understood, but clarity, purpose, peace. He said, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. That wasn't just optimism, it was alchemy. He believed that suffering could shape us if we let it, that fear could reveal truth if we stayed still long enough to listen. And when things went wrong, which they did often, he didn't curse the gods. He didn't collapse into despair. He used the moment as a mirror. Where am I rigid? Where am I grasping? Where am I forgetting that I am not promised control? This wasn't detachment, it was presence, the kind that takes courage, the kind that requires practice. He trained himself not to chase calm, but to become calm. And that doesn't mean he never lost it. He did, but he always returned to the same anchor. This breath, this choice, this thought. He believed that philosophy wasn't something to study, it was something to live, especially when it was hard, especially when things didn't make sense, especially when he felt like running. He wrote, nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul. He built a home inside himself, one thought at a time, one truth at a time, one breath at a time. And in that inner space, he found something that the empire could never give him, a kind of strength that didn't need to conquer to feel whole. Marcus Aurelius lived in a palace, But he practiced thinking like a monk. He didn't get lost in luxury, he didn't seek out comfort, he chose a harder path, one that required discipline, stillness, and humility. He reminded himself daily that status meant nothing, that fame was empty, that wealth could disappear in an instant. He wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." That wasn't morbid, it was freeing, because when you accept impermanence, you stop clinging, you stop panicking, you stop spiraling when things go wrong. He believed that everything could be used to strengthen the soul, even loss, even heartbreak, even failure. And when he was in pain, which he often was, he didn't ask, "Why me?" He asked, "What can this teach me?" That question is a practice, a perspective shift, a way to turn suffering into something sacred. He didn't try to fix the world, he tried to understand his place in it, not as a ruler, but as a human being, temporary, imperfect, capable of choice, and that was enough. When people betrayed him, he didn't lash out. He said, "People behave as they are. It's up to me how I respond." When war tore through the empire, he did what he could, then surrendered the rest. When grief came, he didn't deny it. He let it move through him, then chose to keep walking. He understood something we often resist. That pain is part of the human contract. No one escapes it, no one outruns it. But we do decide what it makes of us. Marcus chose grace, even when it cost him. He once wrote, "If it's endurable, then endure it. If it's not, then stop complaining. Your destruction will mean its end as well." It sounds harsh, but it's actually merciful. It's a reminder that pain has limits, that even the worst moments are finite. He wasn't trying to be cold, he was trying to stay sane. He built emotional boundaries not by shutting down, but by stepping back, by seeing things from above, from a higher vantage point, zooming out, recentering, asking again, what matters right now? Not in theory, not someday. Now, he turned philosophy into action, and action into peace. It didn't come easily, but he kept showing up. That was his superpower, not perfection, but practice. Marcus Aurelius never thought of himself as wise. Not really. He saw himself as a student, always learning, always refining, always falling short, and returning again. That's why his words still resonate. He didn't write as a man who had all the answers. He wrote as someone asking better questions. Questions like, how do I live without bitterness? How do I keep showing up, even when everything feels heavy? How do I stay human when the world asks me to be hard? His answers weren't perfect, but they were real, and that's why we still read them. In a time of excess, he lived with restraint. In a time of power, he practiced humility. In a time of chaos, he sought inner quiet. He said the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. He didn't seek control over others. He sought control over himself. And that discipline, that steady practice of reflection, became his compass. He knew he would die. He knew everything he built would eventually fade. But his goal was never immortality. It was integrity, even when overwhelmed. He chose to come back to simple truths. You are not your emotions. You are not your title. You are not the chaos around you. You are the breath between stimulus and response. You are the space where choices get made. You are the calm inside the storm, if you choose to be. He knew that philosophy wasn't meant for libraries. It was meant for mornings when you wake up tired, for nights when you can't sleep, for days when everything feels impossible. He said, when you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to think, to enjoy, to love. Even after everything, the losses, the burdens, the betrayals, he still believed life was worth showing up for. Not because it was easy, but because it was true. He built a kind of inner temple, one that wasn't shaken by gossip or grief, a place he could return to again and again. And in that stillness, he found peace. Not the peace of a life without problems, but the peace of a mind trained to meet those problems with clarity and grace and depth. That's what we inherit when we read his words. Not rules, not commandments, but a way of being centered, present, and rooted in choice. You don't need to be an emperor to live like that. You just need to begin with one thought, one breath, one moment of stillness in a world that won't stop moving.